9.4 goes over solving quadratic equations by completing the square. When we complete the square, we are finding a new c term in our trinomial to give us a perfect square trinomial. In order to do that, we have to use a formula that is giving us that c value. So c is going to be equal to your b value divided by 2 squared. So whatever your b value is, we're going to divide that by 2, and then we're going to square that number. From there, you would just add it onto your back end of the equation or the expression, and then if it asks you to factor, you'll factor. If not, you'll solve, and we'll go from there. For example, 1a, we are given x squared plus 6x. Our directions are to complete the square for each equation, then factor the trinomial. These are expressions, not equations. So with this, our b term is 6. We're going to use b over 2 squared, which gives us 6 over 2 squared. So that's 3 squared, which is 9. So that 9 we're going to add to the end of this expression to give us x squared plus 6x plus 9. This is now a perfect square trinomial, so in order to factor, we can either find the factors of 9 that add up to 6, or we can say to ourselves, we can take the square root of the first term, we can take the square root of the last term. 2 times the square root of the first term times the square root of the last term gives us that 6x, so it's just x plus 3 squared. So, in other words, the 9 is 3 times 3. We get 6 when we do that, so this is the same thing as saying x plus 3 times x plus 3, which is also the same as just x plus 3 squared. For example, b, we have x squared minus 9x. We got to find our c term. In this case, b is at negative 9. To find c, we're going to do negative 9 divided by 2 squared. That negative 9 divided by 2, can't simplify it, so just square it. This gives us 81 over 4. That 81 over 4 we are going to add to the x squared minus 9x. So this gives us a trinomial that's x squared minus 9x plus 81 over 4. Now, you do not need to find the factors of 81 over 4 that give you the negative 9. The reason why is because what was in the parentheses that you squared is the term that you're going to have in your binomial. The only thing you're going to do is put an x in front of it, and then you're going to have your binomial squared. So it's going to be x minus 9 over 2 squared. For example, c, we have x squared plus 10x. We got to find our c term. Our b term is that 10. So we're going to do 10 divided by 2 squared. That gives us 5 squared, which is 25. That 25 we're going to add to the x squared plus 10x plus 25, and we're going to factor this. Again, you could find your factors of 25 that add up to 10, or you can say to yourself, what was the term inside the parentheses in its simplest form that was squared in order for me to get the 25? It's a positive 5, so I'm just going to have x plus 5 to the second power. For example, d, we're given x squared minus 4x. So our b in this case is at negative 4. In order to find c, we're going to do negative 4 over 2, and we're going to square it. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. We're going to add the 4 to that x squared minus 4x. We get x squared minus 4x plus 4, and we're going to factor this. We don't have to find the factors of positive 4 that give us a negative 4 because we know that we multiplied that negative 2 by itself. So it's just going to be x minus 2 to the second power. For example, e, we have x squared plus 7x. In this case, our b is 7. So in order to find c, we're going to have 7 over 2, and we're going to square it. You cannot simplify the 7 over 2, so that's just 49 over 4. We add the 49 over 4 to the x squared plus 7x. And then we factor this. So again, you don't have to sit there and think, what are my factors of 49 over 4 that are going to add up to be a positive 7? I can look at the term inside the parentheses that I'm squaring and realize that it's a positive 7 over 2. I add the x in front of it, and I just have x plus 7 over 2 raised to the second power. For the next part of our lesson, we are solving these quadratic equations using the completing the square method. When we do this, we want our c term that we're starting with to be on the opposite side of the equal sign as our x squared and our b term. From there, we are going to complete the square on the left side of our equal sign. Whatever we get for our c term, or that's our new c term, we're going to add to both sides of the equation. From there, we're going to factor the left side, add the right side, and solve for our variable. If we look at example A, we're given x squared minus 6x is equal to negative 15. Our constant is already on the other side of our equal side, away from the x squared and the negative 16x. We're good. From here, we are going to take our b term, which is negative 16, and find our new c term. So we said before, c is equal to b over 2 squared. This gives us negative 16 over 2 squared, which is negative 8 squared. Negative 8 squared is 64. So we're going to add the 64 to the x squared minus 16x as well as the negative 15. So this is going to give us x squared minus 16x plus 64 is equal to negative 15 plus 64. From here, we are going to factor the left side and add the right side. So if we factor the left side, we're left with x minus 8 squared. If we add the right side, 64 minus 15 is 49. From here, we're just going to solve. You got to get rid of that squared, or that 2 as a power on the x minus 8 first. So take the square root of both sides. We get x minus 8 is equal to plus or minus 7. Remember, when you take the square root of both sides, you got to put that plus or minus in front of your answer. From here, we separate this into two equations and solve for both. So we're going to have x minus 8 is equal to negative 7, as well as x minus 8 is equal to positive 7. Move your 8 over, add it to both sides. You get that x is equal to 1, as well as x is equal to 15. So for this one, you have two answers, 1 and 15. For example B, we are given x squared minus 2x is equal to 3. Our c term, that's our current c term, is already by itself. Identify your b term. We have negative 2. Find your new c term by taking b over 2 and squaring it. We said b is negative 2, so that gives us negative 2 over 2 squared, which is negative 1 squared, which is 1. We're going to add that 1 to both sides of our equation. So it's going to give us x squared minus 2x plus 1 is equal to 3 plus 1. We're going to factor the left side, add the right side. This gives us x minus 1 squared is equal to 4. From here, in order to solve for x, take the square root of both sides. Remember, since you're taking the square root of both sides, whatever the square root of 4 is, you have to put the plus or minus in front of it. So we're going to have the square root of x minus 1 squared, cancels out the power and the radical to give us x minus 1. The square root of 4, put the plus or minus in front of it, we have plus or minus 2. We are going to have two equations that this separates into. One that is x minus 1 is equal to negative 2, as well as one that is x minus 1 is equal to positive 2. We're going to solve for both. Add your 1 to both sides on each of these. You get x is equal to -1 and x is equal to 3. Oops. For example C, we have m squared plus 12m is equal to -8. Our original C term is by itself on the other side of that m squared plus 12m. Identify your B term. Our B is 12, so we're going to find our new C term by doing b over 2 squared. So that's going to give us 12 over 2 squared, which is 6 squared, and that is 36. We're going to add the 36 to both sides of this equation to give us m squared plus 12m plus 36 is equal to -8 plus 36. From here, we are going to factor the left side, add the right side. This gives us m plus 6 squared is equal to 28. We're going to take the square root of both sides. The square root and the power cancel each other out. We have m plus 6. The square root of 28, we're going to put the plus or minus in front of our answer. 28 is 4 and 7. The 4 is 2 and 2. We group up a set of 2, so that's 2. The 7 stays underneath the radical since it doesn't match up with another 7. From here, we're going to move the 6 over. We do not need to separate this into 2 equations because we still have a radical left. So it doesn't have to be separated into 2. We're going to subtract the 6 from each side. Our answer for this one is going to be m is equal to -6 plus or minus 2 square root 7. So whenever you have the radical left over and you have a term that you have to bring over to the other side, it's going to go in front of that radical. When we have an equation that gives us an a value that is not 1, we have to divide out that a value. So if we look at the next 2 examples, we have an a value that's in front of that x squared that's something other than 1, or that g squared in B's case, that's other than 1. When that happens, divide everything by that a term. From there, do exactly what we just did. Move your current C term over, find your new C term, add it to both sides of your equation, take the square root of the left, add the right, and then solve. For example A, we are given 2x squared plus 20x minus 8 is equal to 0. We have an a here that's 2, so we're going to divide everything by 2 first. This gives us 2 times x squared plus 10x minus 4 is equal to 0. If we divided the 2 from everything, this 2 cancels. So we're just working with the x squared plus 10x minus 4 is equal to 0. So pretty much whatever you divide out, that's your a term, is going to disappear. From here, move your current C term to the other side of your equal sign to get your a and your b by itself. So we're going to add the 4 to each side. This gives us x squared plus 10x is equal to 4. Our b term is 10. To find our new C term, we're going to do 10 divided by 2, and we're going to square it. 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 squared is 25. We're going to add the 25 to both sides of our equation. So we're going to have x squared plus 10x plus 25 is equal to 4 plus 25. Factor the left side, add your right side. Your left side gives you x plus 5 squared. Your right side gives you 29. Now solve for x. Take the square root of both sides. Your radical cancels out your power, so you just have x plus 5. The square root of 29. 29 is a prime number, so you're just going to put that plus or minus in front of it and keep it the square root of 29. From here, we're going to move the 5 over by subtracting it from each side. Remember, it goes in front of the radical term, so x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 29. For example B, we have 3g squared minus 24g plus 27 is equal to 0. Again, we're going to divide everything by 3, and that 3, again, will just disappear. So we have g squared minus 8g plus 9 is equal to 0. We're going to move the 9 over, subtract it from each side. We get g squared minus 8g is equal to negative 9. Find a new c term. You're going to take the negative 8 divided by 2 and square it. So it gives us negative 4 squared, which is 16. Add your 16 to both sides of your equal sign. We're going to have g squared minus 8g plus 16 is equal to negative 9 plus 16. From here, we're going to add the right side, factor the left side. This gives us g minus 4 squared is equal to 7. Take the square root of both sides. We get g minus 4 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. Move the 4 over, add it to both sides. It goes in front of that plus or minus square root 7. So g is equal to 4 plus or minus the square root of 7. The last part of your notes goes over finding maximum and minimum values. The only thing I want you to do with these is to tell me whether or not you have a maximum or a minimum. You do not need to tell me what the actual value is, just to find either the maximum or minimum, or to find if it has a maximum or minimum. For example, for A, we are given y is equal to x squared plus 4x minus 1. For this one, you have a positive A value, which means your parabola would open up. You're going to have a minimum value. For example, B, we are given y is equal to x squared plus 12x plus 40. That x squared is a positive, so again, we have a minimum. For example, C, same thing, that x squared is a positive, so we have a minimum there too. For example 5, we're just telling again maximum or minimum. For A, we have a negative x squared, which means A is negative. Our parabola would open down, so we would have a maximum. For example B, same exact thing. We have a negative in front of that x squared, so our parabola opens down, which means we would have a maximum value.